Hey, Mark, I was listening to Paramore the other day, and it really made me think about the amygdala and the limbic system.
You just made those words up, didn't you?
What, Paramore?
We're the Nevermind the Music podcast, where one musician
and one psychologist
talk songwriting and the mind, one song at a time.
We'll hear everything from Green Day and Outkast
to Stevie Wonder and Dua Lipa.
And we mostly try to stay on topic.
Except for when we don't want to.
Nevermind the Music, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Lorehounds. I'm David.
I'm John.
And I'm Elysia.
And today we're talking with Mark and Nichole from Nevermind the Music, the latest podcast to join the Lorehounds network. Welcome, Mark and Nichole. How are you guys doing?
Great. How are you?
Very good. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're really excited to have you on and to have this opportunity to talk with you guys a little bit about your podcast, which is launching today, the day that we're recording this. A while back, you guys had sent out some emails and we were the recipients. But I think you guys were just looking for advice of like, hey, we got this podcast that we've been recording. How do we launch it? And I don't know, John and Elysia can, maybe you guys can share your experiences. But the moment that I heard one of the samples that you sent us, I was like, wow. I was like, we have to get these people. Elysia, what did you think when you first heard that?
Well, I mean, it was funny because just literally a couple days before that, we were talking about, the tagline for our network and stuff. And you were pointing out specifically like, well, we don't have a music podcast. And, and then it was like 2 days later, we got this email and yeah, it just felt like kismet. It's just was so, because it's not just a music podcast, but it's like, I think, David, you keep saying it's very Lorehounds because it takes a deep dive also into, psychology and history and just putting things into context and deriving deeper meaning from it. So, and it's extremely well edited, I must say.
John, what was your initial reaction when because you got the email and then we had to listen to the recordings?
I think maybe a week or two before this, we were like, all right, we've brought out a bunch of affiliates. I think we're probably a good size now. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. We don't want to go crazy.
Exactly.
And then you guys emailed us and I was like, this is good. We should get them. They should be with us. I just completely contradicted what I had just previously said. And I'm glad we did because I'm excited to listen to more of your content. I was able to listen to your demos and now they're all loaded up now to go public very soon. And I hope people will have the same instantaneous love for your work that I did.
So Mark or Nichole, I don't know who's best positioned for this. Do you guys want to give us the elevator pitch for the podcast?
I'd toss to Mark for that, for sure.
Okay, Mark.
What did I say on the little demo episode? It's two friends talking about music over a beer.
Yeah, I think
really
that was in the intro.
Because we record at like 9 a.m. usually, so not actually a beer there. But yeah, it's lore hounding on a popular song between a musician and a psychologist. That's kind of, but lighthearted, right? It's not a classroom. It's over.
It's a conversation.
Together. Yeah.
Right. How did you guys meet, or like, what's your guy? You're a psychologist, Nichole?
Yeah, I'm a psychology professor, and I have my training as a mental health counselor.
Okay.
And then
we could use that around here.
I think everyone could, right?
Yeah, right.
But before that, I studied art in my undergrad and college, and I've always been interested in like the intersection of art and psychology, and
right.
More than just visual art. I think music kind of falls under that umbrella of creative expression, right? Mark would probably agree. We met teaching. We were teaching at the same institution, and
Hang on.
What's that?
Hang on. We met teaching. You mean our kids were in the same daycare? Is that what you mean? Yes, we were teaching at the same place, but our kids were in the same daycare. Sorry. Edit that out.
Mark.
No, let's keep it in.
So we met reading Green Eggs and Ham to our kids crying a drop off at daycare and then going off into the underbelly of the university.
Love it.
To teach for the day and then coming back at pickup and just venting about the teaching day and kids. And I think,
some of the best friends that you make are in the pickup drop off lines.
It was, and our kids, beyond that, like our kids really connected. So it was like this cool intersection that our families got along, we had great rapport, and our kids liked each other. So that's already completing the Venn diagram of parent friends.
So let's take the next step in podcast.
Well,
It's a natural
Let's make it
progression.
work.
Yeah.
we would get together as families, and me and Mark would just sidetrack with each other and get in the weeds on a specific thing. And our spouses were just sitting there like, okay, like
Mhm.
they're off again, like shop talking. So then
Right.
this seems like a healthier place to put that.
Might as well
Not hang
record
out
that.
again and then I'll talk, right?
Mark, what's your background?
I'm a composer, so I'm a music professor, but my training is in writing music.
Okay.
I also play, I'm in a band, stuff like that. But my background is really thinking too much about this stuff, right?
Mhm.
So whether it's really like started almost to make the music I was creating better, but it turned into a skill itself, right? Like is kind of overthinking why somebody did something and it worked so well.
Mhm.
And so I teach at a community college, which means I've kind of honed my skill to speak to people that are early in the music learning process. Like I haven't worked with grad students in a while. They kind of stress me out because I'm worried they actually know more than me. So my superpower is sort of like bringing people into overthinking about music for the uninitiated kind of is sort of the thing I would say. Though it came out, not to bear your dirty laundry, but Nichole is a recovering flautist. So
Oh, yeah.
that
You
came
said it
out
right
in the
too.
podcast. I did say it right. It took like 5 times. Anyway.
Yeah, I talk a lot on the pod about my background, my toured background in the marching band and learning music theory in high school from some really great instructors and just really always loving music and like really kind of getting it. You'll learn on the pod that I'm very good at certain things in the music world, which surprised us all. Almost perfect pitch, we've determined.
Imperfect pitch.
Imperfect, slightly imperfect. But it was just really kind of nice to dial into that aspect of my knowledge base for this. Be like, wait, I remember learning this. I remember this stuff. So
Right.
It's been really fun. And I think it comes across that we're having a lot of fun doing this. So
what was the moment, the ignition moment, the spark moment of saying like, oh, there they are again, talking up a storm at the barbecue or whatever. When did that or how did that translate into let's actually record a podcast? Because as John and Elysia and I know, we've all had that moment where it suddenly we go from, oh, well, here's this strange idea. And then boom, suddenly logos and artwork and businesses and microphones are filling our lives. And it suddenly takes over. So what was the thing that was the catalyst for this to actually go from chit chat to actual recording?
Well, I was the one who originally wanted to do a podcast, and I was just going to do a music podcast.
Okay.
But I wanted to do it with somebody, and I was bouncing to my wife ideas, and she's like, I don't know what this says about her opinion of me, but you need somebody funny on your podcast. You get somebody funny. So I asked Nichole if she wanted to do it, and it was only really when we first met to talk about it that it became obvious it wasn't going to be a music podcast where I'm this musician bouncing off of a non-musician, but that it needed to also be a psychology podcast. That I needed to be the person who was clueless for half the time, right? And that was what was gonna. I thought that was the sort of what unlocked, the potential was when we realized no, it's not that you are not defined by your not professional musicianness. It's that you are the psych person and that you're gonna have all this cool stuff to say about the music that is gonna make me all surprised, right? That's kind of how I would generate it. But it started from my place, though it grew into way more than that, I would say.
Someone say synergy.
Yeah, right. Nichole, what do you think?
No, I think we just it was an organic choice to play into both those skill sets. I can't just sit and not add something. So it'd be like, oh, I have this really interesting idea about this song too. And I want to say it. Like, I don't want to just sit on it because I think it's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
In our conversation for years, historically, we riff really well together and we always are thinking of the next thing all the time. And I think that this podcast was a great iteration of that for sure.
I'm so impressed by all the prep work that you guys did. How many episodes do you have in the bag already?
Do we want to let everybody know that? Like, I don't want to make people think this isn't a living, breathing thing. We recorded a season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of August. So we can cut this if we want, but whoever's tasked with editing this. But yeah, so aside from mailbags that we're going to be doing periodically, this has all been baked, and that's not how it's going to be in the future. It's just because of the origination of this starting from me having some freer time to prep. So I don't know, Nichole, does it take away too much of the soul if we let everybody know that we've pre-baked the entire podcast?
No, because we talk about it so much, like in the episodes, be like, oh, you might not have listened to the Bone Thugs and Harmony podcast yet, but in that episode we talk about this, or in that episode we talked about Lizzo, and now we're talking about her again. Like that's, I think it's going to be really apparent to the listeners that these have all been cooked. I'm laughing at the idea of prep, because if you watched us record, Mark's prep would be like pages and pages of notes, and my prep would literally be like my coffee. And like a pen, and I'd like scribble notes and change my ideas last minute. So I was very much sold on the idea of just being on-air talent, and I really love that. Like,
as someone who has become known in this trio for never writing anything in the outline besides the outline itself, yeah, I feel you, Nichole. You know, it's just fun to come and give your hot takes.
Yeah, and I think it's fresher that way. And he'll say that he does need to prep because he needs to get samples together, and I typically don't really ever need to do that. So
right.
No, I'm the one who scares co-hosts with like the lengths of documents. So like, no, I'll go through it quickly. It's just I need all the details in front of me.
You definitely did terrify me with V for Vendetta. Anyway,
I listened to that podcast. Yeah, that was epic. But I should say, like, I don't know, this is my teaching style. Like, I prep the notes, but I don't look at them. It's the development of them that makes me able to improvise, right? I'm actually a pretty lousy improviser as a guitar player, but the key to improvise is you prepare, which unlocks improvisation. People aren't literally making everything up as if they've never touched their instrument, right? They prepare, and then that frees them, right? So I remember a little while ago, Nichole, you're like, actually, it would be easier if you gave me a copy of your notes to follow. And you will note, I never did that because I was kind of like, actually, that's just going to make this weird, because you're going to be seeing an incomprehensible stream of cues for which audio file and stuff. And I'm not really looking at the content. I'm just using it there to help me not forget to do something, right? So
I did that just so I would know when it was my turn to talk. That was like my passive aggressive way to say.
Right. We can do that. Yeah. I'll highlight your doing the script.
So I have a question for both of you. And it's going to be a silly one. So the rules here are you can't pick a greatest hits album. But the question is, if you are stranded on a desert island, this is not your favorite album. This is your desert island album. What would be the album you would pick to be the only album you could listen to for the rest of your life?
Ooh.
Carole King Tapestry.
Okay.
Easy.
He said no greatest hits albums.
That's not a greatest hits album.
It's basically of her previous decade of career. This is actually how much time you got, because this is agonizing for me. I will say it's so short. I want to say the Beatles' Revolver, but it's quite short, so it feels sort of like a waste. But I'll say the Beatles' Revolver. I think that's the high point.
You're going quality over quantity. You're not White Albuming this one.
I'm not. So White Album, both of these should be big sidetracks. White Album, half of the White Album is the best Beatles album, and half of the White Album is absolutely the worst Beatles album. So
I
that
see where
inconsistency,
you're going with
and fight me on it, listeners, write in. We could talk about that later, but I'll go with Revolver. Though I'm tempted by some other albums, but one of those gets dropped in a sidetrack that I won't spoil. People just have to wait for it.
I'm actually like kind of changing my idea. I was too quick, because now I'm like, if I'm on a desert island, I don't want to
listen to the bad half of the White Album you're going to choose.
Like, I want to listen to Carole King like with cats all over me and like drinking tea and like making soup or something. So I don't know. I feel like,
you need an album with summer jams and things like that.
Sublime 40 Ounces to Freedom, maybe. Like, I don't know. It's already so played out. It's a hard question. Wow. Okay,
that's more value. That's got like 20 songs on it.
It's 20 songs. Yeah.
I think you're good on Tapestry. I think it's hard to argue.
I second guessed because it's a big choice, so.
I support your first choice, Nichole.
I'm throwing back at you. I want to learn something about you.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
What's yours?
Oh, it's tough. I think I'd have to pick Dark Side of the Moon. I know it's cliche, but like there's just so many beautiful tracks on that, and I feel like I get something out of it every time I listen to it.
And like
Yeah.
things are going to get weird, right, on that island. So
That's right.
You're going to need like.
That's good when the smoke monster attacks. Like to have like brain damage playing while what's his name? I don't remember the
I
bad
think
guy,
it was
the
just
Man in
the
Black.
smoke monster. I think that's
yeah.
the
No, he's the Man in Black.
Great.
All right.
John,
All
I
right, lost
support
Trevor.
your choice because I was debating between Wish You Were Here or Dark Side of the Moon.
I
Same
love
thing.
Wish You Were Here, and I think its highs are higher, but its lows are lower. I think Dark Side of the Moon is banger from cover to cover.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Dark
the
Side
woman
of the
who
Moon
does
is an
the
album, too.
vocal soulization, I forget her name off the top of my head. Like every time I hear
Mhm.
that, I hear something new in it.
You're saying Great Gig in the Sky?
She didn't get paid at first, you know.
Yeah,
well, she
I
got
know.
she
Oh,
got
really?
paid like
Story.
pennies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys
Yeah.
are like us. Marco
Um,
was like, you guys are they're just like us. I was like, oh, okay.
That's what we heard when you heard your sample.
It's
We,
true.
we knew. Elysia, what's yours?
am I allowed to choose a movie soundtrack? Was that in the rules?
I think that.
You can do it. It's not a greatest
Okay.
hits, right?
No, it's not a greatest hits. No, I'm gonna choose the soundtrack for Garden State, which
Yeah.
is like a
Oh.
lot of that like millennial
mid-2000s
indie.
indie.
Yeah, I'm definitely millennial indie kid.
It's a great soundtrack.
You're a Zennial, right? Isn't that
Zennial,
self?
yeah.
Is that like the Shins and stuff like that? Like what? I'm trying to remember what was in that.
Yeah, there's and Lebanese Blonde, and there's
Coldplay.
it's such a good and there's
The Thievery
yeah.
Corporation.
Iron and Wine,
Mhm.
Hmm.
So
Simon and
good.
Garfunkel.
And David,
Oh, me.
you haven't given us your definitive answer. You lean towards Pink Floyd, but
I have to go. Oh boy, I'll go. Wish You Were Here.
all right.
Because
Good
that's
choice.
good too. Like there's someone you probably wish was there with you on the
Mm.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Do you know the lore of Have a
thematic
Cigar?
structure to it too.
Yeah, isn't that's their album experience? That's their studio experience with or engaging with the studio, right?
Have a Cigar is the only song I think in their whole catalog that neither Roger Waters or David Gilmour doesn't sing. And that's because Roger Waters wrote it, and usually he would have sung the song, but he couldn't hit the high notes, and he was really mad about it. So David Gilmour couldn't do it, or he was going to hurt Roger Waters' feelings. So they got somebody who was recording in the next studio to sing it.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did not know that. Very good.
Whatever you got to do to keep the band together, and we know that was very successful in the long term, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
My favorite rendition right now, though, there's a band called The Main Squeeze, and they do this amazing. If you YouTube search for The Main Squeeze, Have a Cigar, the singer is absolutely phenomenal. Anyway, Elysia, I think you had a fun question.
Well, I was wondering what's one piece of music you refuse to cover and why?
We had a lot of conversation about this, like in our iteration process. Like there are a couple of artists that we agreed to not touch.
Mm-hmm.
One we addressed in one of our like micro. We have these little sidetrack episodes that are just like extra conversation. Mark's a really big fan of Michael Jackson, but we had a conversation about kind of addressing that. We also agreed.
To be clear, I'm a fan of Michael Jackson, and I also have significant misgivings about Michael Jackson. Right?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's not that I am the one on the side of. I have an answer to that question, though, in line of that.
Okay.
R. Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
We're never doing R. Kelly. Like,
no.
You know,
For the same reasons.
For the same reason, but
yeah,
it's
harder not to do Michael Jackson than not to do R. Kelly, though.
Yeah.
Exactly. Also, we talk about Taylor Swift because I like Taylor Swift songwriting a lot, but we agreed to never, in the first season anyway, to never really deep dive into one of her songs as not to activate the Swifties.
Don't do that.
It's not expose ourselves as frauds.
Yeah, they start beefs with fictional vampires. Like, watch out.
Yeah, it's just fine. Yeah. Like, someone's gonna. We always said, like, if there's a fandom that someone's gonna be a bigger fan than us on Taylor Swift, on like Beyonce, right? And we talk about them in passing, but we don't want to offend anybody, and some of these fandoms get really. They take things really personally, as they should, because they love the music and they'll love it more than we ever could. So we just left that alone. But those were some boundaries we set early on.
So what are the next three, or what are the first three episodes that are going to be out now? Because the feed is live, right? So search for Nevermind the Music, or you can go into the lorehounds.com webpage. But what are the first three episodes that are dropping?
Yeah, so Tuesday, September 10th, 3 episodes drop. The first one is Paramore, their tune, That's What You Get. second episode is The Sign by Ace of Base. And the third episode is
that's
Crossroads. Oh, yeah.
That taps into some
Sure.
history for me.
If anybody wondered our age demographic, right? The Ace of Base. And then The Crossroads by Bone Thugs and Harmony is the third one.
That's a nice sampling of genres.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Although we speaking of just like noting our age, we definitely lean a lot on the 90s and the 2000s, we would say, overall throughout the season at least. Some newer stuff, some older stuff. Yeah.
So what are some other highlights that you could maybe drop? Or, how far back do you go? Do you get 60s and 70s?
What do you want to say? What are your highlights?
My highlights, I really liked, I liked the Lizzo episode that we did. I thought that was a really good conversation. I liked the Bruno Mars that we did and the Drake episode. There's a lot. I don't want to give too much away, like what's on our roster. But we
want to tease people a little bit.
We have a lot of content.
We've got some 70s, some 80s.
The TLC episode. So good.
More 90s R&B. We've got... I remember Depeche Mode coming up in the Last of Us coverage, and we have a Depeche Mode episode.
Cool.
It's funny because we established early on that I'm a huge fan of 80s new wave and synth pop and stuff. And then I realized I kind of avoided it after that. So we actually only have a handful of 80s episodes, probably because I was trying not to play to stereotype too much. But the furthest back we go is
there's always a season 2,
late
Mark.
60s.
Yeah.
There's always a season 2.
I like 80s synth pop, so please go wild.
I can only be made fun of by Nichole so many times before it starts affecting my decisions.
I actually really liked our full episodes are great, but we got so sidetracked in recording that we'd end up with like a whole sub episode just when I rant about Left Eye or when I rant about grief or something, that we made these sidetrack episodes that kind of add some value as well.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you have your main episodes and these sidetrack things, right?
And some of them are, as she said, like literally cut from the main conversations to the point that Nichole didn't even necessarily know they would be episodes. I'm like, by the way, that's an episode. Remember that conversation about why you hate California? But
so sorry.
I'm a Californian, by the way, so that's why it's yet another personal attack from Nichole. But some of them are premeditated. So the first sidetrack is the 4th episode, which will come out a week after launch, which is us bringing our top 5 cover songs, our top 5 cover versions, and comparing them.
Okay.
And I've got some audio samples of them. So some of them are music related and actually, involve some deep diving, but they're not episodes on a specific song. It's more of a lighthearted conversation about our favorites or maybe least favorites sometimes.
We're going to take the intro that you guys prepared as well, sort of the official intro, and we're going to tack it on to the end of this podcast so folks can hear that as well. And you guys talk about the sidetracks versus the main pods and stuff on that. Where do people find you? How do people find you? What's the contact information?
You're the one that knows how to say the email address properly.
Oh gosh, well, we had such
She does it on most of the episodes.
I need the script. You can find us on Instagram. We're NeverMusicPod on Instagram, and Nevermind the Musicpod at gmail.com.
False.
Oh no.
We are also NeverMusicPod at gmail.com.
There you go.
Yeah. We've had some drama with Google, but yes, we are NeverMusicPod kind of everywhere.
Okay. Got it. And we've got a Discord channel set up for you on our server, and conversations already been happening there. Yeah. And folks can also just go to lorehounds.com and find your podcast in our main feed there, or they can search for Nevermind the Music on their podcast player of choice and subscribe.
You can go to the lorehounds.com, and if you click the subscribe button, go to the Nevermind the Music pod, and it'll give you the option for whatever pod player you use.
Perfect. Mark, Nichole, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast with us today. And as a quick reminder for folks, we have that 5-minute intro that you guys recorded for the podcast, and we've tacked that on to the end of this recording. So that'll play in just a moment. But thanks again for everything, and we're really excited for your season of Nevermind the Music.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. You're great.
Thanks so much. Happy to be a part of it.
Could the tone of this intro be us trying to decide what the tone of the intro is?
It's key that people know that we're like academics, but that we're doing this irreverently. That's what I want them to know. What would we say?
Are you recording now?
Yeah.
Are we recording right now? We're recording?
We're recording the pre-conversation.
Oh my
the
gosh.
Pre-party.
Hi, I'm Nichole.
And I'm Mark. and this is Nevermind the Music.
Hey, Mark, do you ever notice that when you're listening to music, one part of the song just gets really stuck in your head and you like ruminate on it and you can't get it out of your head?
Absolutely, and I've got some musical explanations for that, but I bet you have some psychological explanations for it.
I totally do.
Anybody remember in high school or middle school or even college, you had that professor that would every now and then just like waste a lot of time talking about random stuff?
Yeah,
and
that's us.
half the time you're like, we have a test tomorrow, but most of the time you're like, yeah, he's
like,
wasting time. Yeah. That's this podcast.
I think it is, yeah.
I do that in my classes. Like,
I'm notorious for that I've had people like, we're off track right now. I'm like, okay. I'm like, gosh, nerd.
You say notorious. That's right. That student. But you say notorious like it's bad. That's where the meaningful learning happens.
It's when
someone raised their hand and they start talking about hardcore punk. When I was teaching a lecture on Beethoven and we go on this 20-minute sidetrack that I feel like people are going to remember that better than if we just stuck to the plan.
I think so. I mean, maybe that's ADHD, but I'm not sure. And I think that...
You're not a psychologist or anything? Oh, wait a minute. We are two friends, one a psychology professor, the other a music professor, talking about a song over a beer.
Maybe we drank too much coffee. When we first started, I told you the first thing I do when I listen to a new song is I read the lyrics, and you told me I was listening to music wrong.
Oh, no, I did not tell you that. Are you kidding?
And you said, you're listening to it wrong. And I was like, how could it be wrong?
If I said that, I have edited it out of the podcast in shame because I did not mean to say that.
Yeah, you're like, well, you're doing it wrong. I was like, well, what's the right way? Mark, what are some of like the different songs that we've talked about so far in this pod?
Well, there's that time that we started talking about The Sign by Ace of Base, and I wanted to talk about how they do some cool key changes from major to minor, and then you started talking about Jung's collective unconscious. How did we get there?
I don't know. It made sense at the time. I don't honestly, Mark.
So I've written down the topics of the episodes.
I don't even remember half the things that we talk about on
So what about the episode where we talk about how the way a Dua Lipa song's melody is built is analogous to the various personality components of a person?
that was really cool. We talked about like how you take like a foundation and keep adding and adding and adding onto it, and that myriad of sound creates this really complex texture, like the myriad of our personalities created with our life experiences.
What I love about this podcast is I think I know why a piece of music works the way it works. And I bring a song to the table and I'm like, let me show you a cool chord, or let me show you a cool melodic trick. And you tell me actually why. There's like a brain thing going on. Like, we're talking about a catchy melody and you're like, let's talk about intrusive thoughts for a second.
That conversation got weird, though, that intrusive thought conversation. And then sometimes we talk about things so much that we go on rants, and we had to create like whole sidetrack episodes. We listened to Party in the USA and talked about like coming of age and stereotypes and how you fit in certain places but not other places.
Do you remember the sidetrack?
What was the sidetrack on that?
How much you hate Los Angeles and love Boston.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just think that people in Boston are kind, but not nice.
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. Save it.
I'm just saying, like, there are differences. I'm a Boston girl, and you're an LA guy, and that's...
LA guy. Oh, my San Diego family and friends are spinning in their... Wait. They're fine. They're in San Diego. They're not mad.
No, they're not mad.
They're not listening. They're too busy.
No, they're too busy just being nice to everybody.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I liked the sidetrack about how I had a really lousy high school music teacher, even though I'm the professional musician, and you had a really awesome high school music teacher.
I had the best high school music teacher.
That's right. He'll get a whole episode later. Nevermind the Music is part of the Lorehounds network. We launched on Tuesday, September 10th, with 3 full episodes featuring Paramore, Ace of Base, and Bone Thugs and Harmony. Be sure to subscribe now so you don't miss any episodes when they drop. Tell us what you think by sending an email at NeverMusicPod@gmail.com. We're also on social media at NeverMusicPod. So the theme music stopped about 15 seconds ago, so we'll see you then. Thanks for listening. Nichole, did you ever notice how the sign by Ace of Base has really strange key changes?
I did not, Mark. I'm a real person.
Well, let me tell you about it. I'll let you talk about neuroscience gobbledygook.
Yes, I thought you'd never ask.
This is the Nevermind the Music podcast,
Where one psychologist
and one musician
deep dive into the songs you love.
so you don't have to.
And there's plenty of time to get off topic.
From Semi-Charmed Life to The Way You Move.
And who could forget the crossroads?
Is it the crossroads or the crossroads?
Save it for the episode, Mark.
Listen to Nevermind the Music.
Wherever you get your podcasts.